Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, where we've created a platform to help athletes and other alumni network and connect with each other and tap into various resources in health and career and business. But more importantly, this show is all about athletes transition out of sports. It's such a major issue today between mental health and financial literacy. So we interview former college and professional athletes, and we talk about their journey and transition out of sports, ultimately into successful business leadership and entrepreneurship. So excited today to have Jermal McCoy. How you doing, Jermal?
I am slightly better than great, Rob. How you doing?
That's great. I love that. That's a way to get this thing started. We're rolling now. I'm doing great, thanks. He played college basketball at Texas State, and then ultimately he played for the Harlem Globetrotters a little bit, and then some other professional basketball overseas. And once he got back and kind of transitioned out, he got into the education field, which he's been in for many years now. He's in education leadership, and he's the founder and CEO of Life After Ball, which we're going to hear more about. Joel, I like to ask the question, how did sports shape you growing up, leading up into college?
Well, shaped me. I would say sports actually grew me up. Sports was more like a parent almost to me, if you think about it, because I did grow up in a single household with just my mom, my brother, and sister, and literally my family has a family tree of basketball players, from my father to his younger brothers and my uncles who were all kind of close in age, and watching that discipline and watching that growth through them, because I'm the last one. I come from a family of McCoys. In Indiana, McCoys used to be a decent name when it came to basketball. Like I said, my uncle went to University of Maryland. His younger brother, they were talking like 6 year difference between the oldest and myself. His younger brother, who played at Howard University. Then I had my older brother who played at Iowa State University. And then me being the tallest of the four of us, I played at Texas State and then played a little bit professionally. So it grew me up. It literally grew me up through my family and the relationships that I developed through the sport.
Yeah, that's great. That little bell sound that just
Yeah.
adds to it. Yeah. It's like that magic moment. So let's talk about the whole idea with athletes transition out of sport. As I mentioned in the beginning, it's such a major issue, and I think it's gotten better, but there's I think a little bit of a lack of education. When you were at Texas State, was there any type of programs and beyond the 1 day workshop where they worked with the athletes across all sports and talked about transitioning out of sports and next steps?
I will say there wasn't. No, they did have a student center that talked about it. They touched on it, but it wasn't as in your face as things are now. I think it's something, a stigma most athletes might have, and it's the thought of it ending. And you're like, I'm preparing for the next level. I'm not preparing for the end. I'm preparing for the next level. And nobody ever taught you how to balance both and be prepared on both ends. So we did have a student center. We did have an athletic department. Our athletic department did have a system in place to help if you want to plug in. So as an athlete, you had to plug into it. It wasn't something that was kind of mandatory.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because one of my podcasts, I talked to this guy who played football at University of Buffalo, and he said, Rob, I really wish that it would have been mandatory, that there would have been like, say, a 6 week workshop or maybe some type of credits that they had to take just for that, because there's so much involved. Again, the health, the financial side of things. I mean, you always hear about different things with financial literacy, and unfortunately, a lot of athletes that end up, on the wrong side of things when it comes to money, making a lot of money and just, different things, just didn't have the education there.
When I think about my background in itself, and I think about my teammates in college at that time, almost all of us came from low income families, and we could relate on that level. So, like you said, financial literacy, I never knew my mom to buy a house or to purchase a car. It was always, either you're renting or you bought it used. So I knew nothing about the financial structures that were available that the world actually had on an everyday basis. So absolutely
Yeah,
right.
yeah, and that's key. I think that's something like we've even talked about too, about going in and just, maybe formulating some additional curriculum and education to help athletic departments out. And not only for the current athletes, but for the alumni athletes as well, because, athletes like yourself that were fortunate to go on and play some professional ball. So now they're getting done. It could be a year, 2 years, 5 years later, to be able to tap back into their alma mater and to be able to have those resources, I think is pretty important.
Right, right. That alma mater piece is so critical. So we hang our hats on that alma mater almost on every job or every football game you might go see. I have my alma mater stuff around my room, but actually going back and plugging back in has always been something that's kind of, and I don't know if my friends are the same way. They've all played professional sports as well. And going back to that college has always been like some kind of friction between that for some reason. So that's why I love Alumni Direct. It kind of eases that connection.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we want to do that because I think it's important. I mean, it's just because it's like your career ends playing college professionally. I mean, you still need that team going forward, and I think it's really important. So let's talk about kind of segue into that, the importance of networking and connecting, but talk about it, how important it is while you're still playing.
Let me tell you what I tell my athletes that I coach. Your network is a direct reflection of your network. Simple as that. So, that I always took that analogy of guilty by association. I never took it as negative. I always said, "Oh, so if I hang out with this group, the kids that know everything, people will think I'm smart. I'm going to go over here." So I always use it that way. So that's kind of was my introduction to networking, was getting in trouble initially as a kid. And then like, wait a minute, maybe if I change who I associate with, things will change. And even transitioning from college to professionally, I found myself networking with a lot of other players who were in that transition of going from college to pro. I'll say, if I'm going to be a pro, I need to be around people who have that same goal and like-minded. That the networking piece kind of came to me naturally in a sense, because I had that, even on the court, I was a natural born leader on and off the court. But those who weren't, I could see that there was almost handicapped in a sense from not knowing how to network or how to actually interact with other people that didn't have the same background as you might have, or didn't go down the same road you might have taken to get to where they're at. But we're all here. Learning how to network is almost vital, and I always say it's vital. Even with the lab, I tell one of the first things people get when they get done playing, I say, the first thing you need to do is volunteer. And they're like, "What do you mean? What do you mean volunteer? Go to Habitat for Humanity, help build a house." I said, most companies or corporations are not going to send your everyday 9 to 5 worker to the events like that. You're going to be working with VPs or C-suite level employees. You can actually network and kind of build your brand out of that. So it's like we said, networking is vital if you want to secure a tight knit network group or even circle of friends.
Yeah, and then I love that. That's a great idea of going and getting involved in some nonprofit events. And you're right, meeting those people. The people are there. I was I a couple guys that talk about this a lot on the podcast, but there was talking to a freshman and a sophomore in college, and I mean, obviously they still have a long way to go, but they said they would really like to learn networking. And I take it back and I talk about even back to the high school days where you've got your teammates, their parents, your coaches. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity to meet these people and form these relationships, which is the key. It might be something that it might not come into play until many years later, but you just never know.
Well, as an educator, one of the things that I would say to the students was saying, I said, you know what? You know who could be sitting right next to you right now? You have no idea who it is. That could be Bill Gates. You have no idea what he's going to grow up and be. So if you're treating people the way you should be, of course, networking and ties into how you treat people around you. So I try to feed that in the early stages when I was doing that. So you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key is to, and I always talk about having that giving approach. Don't go in networking saying, Jamal, how can you help me? But like, how can I help you? But like,
Yes.
what can you do? And just that helping mentality, I think, goes a long way. And you never know where it will come back the other way for you.
Yep, exactly. As a coach, I tell my point guards, hey, look, if you have more assists, you'll get more points, and focus on your assists and not the points. And next thing you know, they come out the games. Coach, you were right. I said, now you have to apply that to life. You have to give more than you receive.
Oh, yeah, and then it's interesting because I haven't really I just thought about this as we're talking here, but as a coach, I think a lot of obviously the athletes look up to their coaches. Is that something that you find yourself kind of a conscious effort of trying to get your players out there and helping them when they're beyond playing?
I can tell you, Rob, as a coach, I knew the importance of it before I became a coach, because I remember how important my coaches were to me. At some point they were my dad. At some point they were my trainer. At some point they were my advisor. They're my mentor. And I'm like, that right there is a crutch of being an athlete. It's the benefit of being an athlete. You have a coach from the youngest age till it's time to end. It's your biggest asset and it's the biggest loss when it's over. So
What's the from a networking perspective, and I know we probably talked about this offline, but something that keeps coming, especially because on this podcast we interview all different types of athletes, different sports, and the one thing, the common denominator for me is I think that athlete skill set, the DNA, is the same. I mean, yes, you're playing different sports, hand-eye coordination, all that, but for the most part, at least from a mentality standpoint, it's the same. So, do you find yourself when you were playing professionally basketball, networking, connecting across different sports, or did you kind of find yourself more so staying within that sport?
I can say as a professional, I was probably more isolated to my sport than in college. In college, you were able, because you can go out and support other sports while you're there. They're so close knit and schedules align perfectly. As a professional, because your schedule is so rigorous and it's completely filled from almost start of the day to the end of the day. And if you were like me, I was a hyper OCD about training and all that. I got 2 or 3 times a day of workouts in. And when it was time to shut it down, I shut it down. It just really comes down to, even the longevity of the sport. If you're in the sport longer, then it affords you more time to go and explore and network with other sports and stuff like that. But I found myself networking more with corporations, other teams, other coaches, and players from other teams, other coaches, and even more marketing and business people in that realm versus other sports as a whole.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So let's actually I'll jump to the questions. Sometimes I mix them in. I don't know if you cheated and watched or listened to any other episodes, but we'll see here. Because sometimes I think people do like, okay, I got my answer, I'm ready to go. 10 words or less. What advice would you give to freshmen in college, Jermal?
10 words or less. No, this is new. I didn't see this. So let me think about it. Stay coachable. I would always say stay coachable, stay focused, limit your distractions. And here's a good one. Definitely always stay prepared. Change is guaranteed. Stay prepared. And if you stay ready, you won't have to get ready.
There you go. All right, I like it. That's a tough one sometimes. Everyone's like, okay, so which do I think about? Do I think about some of the things I did that I shouldn't have done? Do I think about like, what I could have done better? But that's good. I like that. So now let's fast forward to senior Jermal.
All right. Senior. Are we saying senior as an age or senior in college?
No, senior in college.
So
I'm with you on the senior part, man. I'm knocking on the door. It depends on which way you look at it.
Right. I will tell you, my senior year was scary, man. It was scary because I didn't know what was going to be next. Playing professionally was never a dream of mine. All of like I said, my family was their dream. They wanted to play in the NBA or bust. That was literally their motto. But for me, I was like, I went to college to get a degree so that I can come out with a great pay. I wanted to do the blueprint. College degree, go work for someone, move up the ladder, corporate ladder, and go that route. But when I realized that the corporate ladder was different than what I thought it was. It became scary. So when I remember my last game, that last cheer, I was like, man, this was it. It was the NCAA tournament. We were playing against Minnesota, got beat by 30. They changed the channel, but we made it to the NCAA tournament. We won our round. But then after that game, it was very something. The locker room was full of tears because most of the guys were seniors, and we were like, what's next? We had no idea. And I can tell you, it was a very scary moment. And if I would have known then what I know now, I would have been more excited because it gave me an opportunity to become whoever I wanted to become at that point. It was like, okay, you can start over now. This is not your identity. This is what you did, not who you are. So, yeah, I can tell you, we had a great year, but at the end of it, I remember going to those job interviews and doing the job fairs at the school. I put my tie on and had no idea what to expect. And then, my resume was really thin. And I was, I'm looking at everybody. Again, I'm competitive. I'm an athlete. I'm looking at everybody's resumes. I'm like, wow, you got a 2-page resume. Mine is a paragraph. But no one taught me how to transfer my skills. So I figured it out. It was one of those things we had to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, you threw a lot of good information there, a lot of nuggets, I always call them. First off or last off, when you're talking about the whole resume thing, I think it's so important. I mean, I think the athlete is the resume. Being the athlete and the skill set and everything you have, athletes need to realize that. I talk about how this one athlete said that, brought his resume to career services. They kind of, said it wasn't very good. But again, he just didn't have that opportunity. I mean, he was playing his sport, and his skill sets will definitely transfer. I also like when you talked about just the identity of yourself as an athlete, and I think that's a big struggle that most athletes have is just they look at themselves as the sport, not the person that has many years ahead of them. And I think that's key is that, out there, you need to realize that, to all our fellow athletes out there, that when you're done with the game, I mean, it's the next chapter. You're gonna be on a new team, and just go for it and have fun and utilize what you're best at.
Agreed. I think that we forget that you can have fun outside the sport.
Sure.
One of the questions I was asked: when's the last time you felt that championship feeling, like you just won a big game? When's the last you had that feeling as a person versus an athlete? And you'd be surprised by the answers I get.
It's a good question. I have to think that one myself. I don't know what I'd answer that question. So let's switch gears to alumni engagement. And of course, this is something important to us at Alumni Directs. When you were there, was there a movement to bring alumni athletes back to work with the other athletes? And it could have been across sports, not just the homecoming game, but like literally coming back and mentoring and things like that.
I would definitely say that at Texas State, there wasn't much. I didn't even go back to homecoming until maybe almost 20 years after I graduated. It was just a disconnect, especially I moved to a different state, and I didn't know many. When I got to Texas, I didn't know anybody. When I left, I knew a lot of people, but everybody kind of, when they graduated, went back to their hometowns. And I did not get reconnected to my alumni until probably about 2020, 2019, 2020. They dedicated the basketball court to one of my teammates who retired in the NBA, played with the same team, and they retired. They named the court after him. And that moment of us actually coming back and getting together sparked something in all of us. Where it went from not only not going back to events and games they may have in my area because they play everywhere, to even donating and sending money back to my school to help other athletes. Where before I didn't really see the point of that. Now it's like, hey, I want to plug in. I want to use this reconnection to actually help the people behind me, to help me, that got me where I'm at now. It's definitely needed. And it's something I encourage all athletes, and not even athletes, regular college graduates, to plug back. The resources there are phenomenal, and we don't even realize it. Even starting a business, I went to the local college here. I forgot that you can go to their small business center and utilize the services if you live in the county. It's like, wow. So I had them write my business, help me write the business plan and everything.
Yeah, that's great, and you hit a lot of good points there. I think it is so important for alumni to come back, and it's a two-way street. I mean, I think sometimes alumni do or don't want to come back, but I think you brought up just the value of wanting to get back, and I think everybody has that point of time, and I think the athletic departments in the schools just need to work on that. And just sometimes people don't want to go like to their alumni sites and all that because they're afraid they're going to hit up for money. And it's understandable because the schools do need to raise money, that being an educational system, but there's the right way to do it. And I think if you, like, we take a friend raising approach, and I think it's just more so to bring back alumni and have them mentor, and not necessarily, all within their sport. It was interesting. I was at a college athletic department last week, and we were talking, and at their model with bringing their alumni back to mentor, it doesn't have to be the same sport. So in other words, like they had, like it could have been the basketball player coming back and working with the baseball player, the football player, which I think is good because athletes are athletes, and they had that experience playing, and now they're out doing different things, and to bring that knowledge back and help the current student athletes or just students in general, I think is really important.
What that ties right into is the fact that it helps the athletes see that there's something on the other side of the field, of the court, of the ball. There's something else that I have to aspire to versus just trying to go professional or pro in this sport. Now I can see I'm here. Now I can see there's got to be something I can start looking at the end. A lot of people tell you now, as a professional myself now in starting a company, they tell you, look, when you start your company, have the end in mind when you start it. And I never understood that. And if I would have known that as an athlete, it would change the trajectory. One sport, actually, I could tell you some women's sports, for some reason, do a really good job at preparing for what's next, whether it's sports or not sports. And they transition a lot easier than us guys.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point there, but and a lot of it has to do, I think, is probably doing like knowing what's out there professionally. I mean, obviously things are changing, but I mean, like you look at Caitlin Clark, and I'm sure, she's many of the women are trying to change the face of, women's basketball out there and make it more prominent. And, I guess, now because it's current, you think about her, but I think a lot of these athletes in sports, even like me, I talk about being a cross country and track runner. I was good. I was on the fringe of varsity, but I knew that I wasn't going to be an Olympian or professional runner. So my transition was much easier, and I was thinking big picture stuff. So I think a lot of these other sports are thinking that way as well. That they know that when they're done, there might not necessarily be that professional team or league in that. So then they're more open to getting that big picture then. So let's talk about transition out of sport. And so we're going to talk two for you. So your first transition from playing college basketball to the professional level, talk a little bit about that.
So I can bring in, my spirituality on that one, because it's like I said, it was something I never wanted to do, was play professionally. It wasn't a desire of mine, put it like that. I'll never forget, after the NCAA tournament, I was trying to figure out, I worked at a TBI center, traumatic brain injury center, overnight. So I stayed overnight to help those individuals. And one of those, I remember one night, one of the guys said, "You're too big for this. You're supposed to be doing something else. Like, what else are you doing?" And I was like, man, maybe I should be looking at something else. I just prayed, asked God to give me direction. And I was very specific about what I wanted and the way I wanted my questions answered. And I asked for 3 people to tell me what it is I should be doing. And the very first one was a little girl in a bakery. She said, "Mommy, look, it's a basketball player." And I was like, "Oh, she's just saying it because you're tall." I said, "Well, yeah, okay. Oh, just okay. That's a little check one. Okay." Then the second one was, I was at a girlfriend's house, and her aunt pulled me into a room, and she was telling me about all these things that she did. And then she told me she was a psychic. I was like, "Oh God, okay, we got a psychic here." So I'm listening. She said, "I really see you playing basketball in the NBA arena, and it's a red and blue uniform." And I was like, "What team is red and blue?" Didn't think about that. The last one was the one that took the cake. I would say, I'm not going to say my mortal enemy, but he was a villain for me on the court. He was a player who had graduated the year before I got there. We played the same position. I basically came and slid into the position that he would have had. And every time he came back, we just battled on the court. We just did not like each other. And at the end of the regular season, he was in the gym training, and we work out together. He asked me to come work. Let's just work out together, play one-on-one. We're playing, and we're doing well. We're playing. And at the end of the game, he just stopped. He said, "Man, you can't not do this. Like, you're too skilled. You got too much talent. You do the game a disgrace if you stop playing basketball." I said, "Okay, that did it. That does it. I'll try." A tryout came out in Texas, and it was the SBDL, Southwest Basketball Development, which turned to the CBA, which is now the NBDL, the old Developmental Basketball League. And I went to the tryout, spent the night in my car, because it was a 2-day tryout, spent the night in my car, and went first round, second pick in the draft. And that's what let me know, you know what, you might have something here. I went back, and when I got the call that I got drafted, I had a month left to get my degree. And I said, "Hey, I get my degree in a month. It'd be great." They said, no, we're not. But this phone call is for you to show for practice. I said, "Well, man, what do I do?" Like, "You have to make a decision and let us know." Hung up, and I knew my grandfather would have a fit if I did not stay and get my degree. So I stayed. I got my degree. After I got done with that, I was trying to figure out what's next. It just so happened that my roommate from college, his uncle was a super trotter, the one that was on the Scooby-Doo shows and all that. And he invited me to come out and got connected with an agent. He invited me to come out and do a trial with the Globetrotters. I was in Florida for a week doing tryouts, and the rest was history. Next thing you know, at one point, I was in the NBA arena in a red and blue uniform. I said, so.
They had that one all pegged for you. That was good. The girl, the psychic. That's awesome. That's good
Right.
stuff.
It kind of blew my mind. I was like, wait a minute, okay. Years later, but it happened.
Yeah, definitely. So was there challenges as far as just being used to that, like, maybe that college schedule and all that, to all of a sudden now you're playing professionally?
Oh man, definitely. What the schedule was rigorous. You wake up at 6, do your you're traveling during the day. After you get off the road, you go to the mall, get your legs loose, go to practice for the rest of the night, and the game in the evening. That was literally my life every day, every single day, until you for about it was about 2 years like that. And when it was done, and when I played on other teams and had a similar schedule, but when it was over, man, just to wake up, it was like, okay, and you're still waking up at the same time. It's like, do I go train? No, I can't train because I'm injured. So you immediately shift to depression. So it was extremely tough. And it's like, okay, how do I get out of this? Like, who am I? What am I about to do? What am I going to do? And then you're looking at your account just dwindle. It's just dwindle. It's like, and that's when I realized, if you're not making money, you're spending money. There's the other two. Yeah, it was nervous, and I realized that because it's an injury, I had to figure out I have to let this go, and being able to say I have to let this sport go, and having a contract on the table at the same time made me really realize that kind of I had to figure out I was 20, 26, 27 years old, and it was a pivotal point in my life to either continue to chase the dream for what 5 more years, if 32, but I say with the knee injuries and stuff like that, I said, you know what? Someday I would love to be able to play with my kids. And I know if I keep going, then I'm going to tear my knee up. I'm going to be able to crawl on my knees. I won't be able to do most of the things that most everyday people can do at this young age. I let it go. I let go, which is the hardest thing to do, is to let go. And now let's expand and find something else. And I just was so happy to talk about networking. Here's a good connected thing about networking. I walk into a trailer, and the parking lot with the trailer had a sign that said, "We're hiring." I go in, it's a trailer for LA Fitness. They're coming to Georgia, first super club in Georgia. And the guy that's in there, we're talking, and he asked me where I was from. I'm from Indiana. Well, okay, I'm from Indiana too. What high school did you go to? We went to the same high school. I was hired on the spot.
100%. I talk about that all the time. That's great. Yeah. That's what you got to do with that. So let's talk about, like, what since you've gone through, and I know what we're going to get into life after ball here in a minute, but what advice, just a few words of advice to athletes as they look to transition out, whether it's from college or professionally?
The very first advice is find yourself. Deal with yourself first. Before you can't really move into different spaces until you heal yourself to be able to go in those spaces. I know how difficult it is to watch other people play the sport that you love so much, and you want to play and you can't. Don't let that keep you stuck. You want those memories that you have playing in a sport to be good memories, but not your only memories. One big thing. Another piece I actually help guide, and especially talking to younger athletes, is keep a plan B. What's wrong with having a plan B? You can do plan A and B together. But the one thing, the advantage that you have about plan A, and people you don't realize it, is that it's going to end. It's not about if, it's about when. And if you're prepared for that, hey, just being prepared gets you in place that you don't know, because your conversation is different. Your networking is different because you're preparing for something bigger than where you're at. And you can take that skill set and use that in more than just sports. So that's one of the biggest things. I let them know it's a lot more to you than the sport. That talent was a tool. It wasn't an identity.
Okay, great advice there. And so now let's many years of education. We talked a little bit offline, just coaching and making an impact, and now into business leadership, within education. So talk about the origin of Life After Ball, and tell us a little about some of the things that you're doing there.
Awesome. So, of course, my origin for my Life After Ball came from my own experience. And I saw a video. I was watching a YouTube video one day. This is everybody's out in the park, and one person gets up and just starts dancing. And everybody's starting to looking at him like, what's wrong with this guy? Then somebody else joins in. Then somebody else joins in. Now the whole crowd's dancing. And that was the moment I said, you know what? One person can make a difference. I'm going to start dancing. I started dancing, and somebody came along. My partner, Ahmad, he came in and said, let's formalize it. 2018, we got together and said, you're doing the same things I'm doing, helping people transition from playing sports to real life. And if my network is your network, I just open up my network to anybody that's looking for it. And I help several friends go back to college. I have one story, Quadre. He's a great friend of us since high school. He finished playing. They have a statue of this guy in Portugal. That's how good he was out there. They have a statue in Portugal. Helped him come back. He went back to college, finished his degree up. Then he went back to college and he got an education. Helped him craft his resume to get an education. Now he's an assistant principal at a local high school and a head basketball coach. I said, now you get to do what I did for you. And you get to help everybody else do, at this point. So when I saw that, I said, you know what, we can do this at a bigger scale. And we formally created Life After Ball in 2019 as a company and did all our intellectual property, formalized the business plans and everything, created our board, got our board together. And now we literally help athletes transition using our 4 core C's, where we use career, our counseling, our community service, and our connections, our networking. We offer programs to high school, college, and former professionals at all levels, at all ages. It doesn't matter if you played high school and you're 30 years old and you want to plug in. We let people come plug in because we know the mentality and the time. A lot of people forget about all the time we put into these sports and athletics. And it was formative growth times. Using that wheel and that carrot, we capture a lot of former athletes and people stick. They know that we're not after anything. So those former pros, we're not after your money. We're here to help you have a group of friends that's not looking for anything from you. How about that? So, and you'd be amazed at the warmth we get from that, because you say everybody's always asking. They think I play professional sports, have all this money somewhere, and they don't really realize a lot of that money is gone after the first contract, or if you didn't make it to the second contract, what 60-70% of people don't make it to the second contract. That's a lot of people. That's what we do, and the thing that really drives my heart, it's my passion project, is actually just helping people that's been on the same road that I've been on. I've seen high school friends of mine who talk about, remember that play you did X, Y, and Z, and you dunked on that guy? I'm like, man, I've had so many other moments that I don't really remember that, and I feel bad that I don't remember it. But then it reminds me, like, hey, you're operating from that high school when you were successful. And you're trying to find a place we were at the same point together. Let me help you find another moment so we can have this moment again in a different way.
Yeah.
So that's the lab as a whole. That's just like a little overview of the story, kind of what we've done and what we've gone through.
So is it everything online? Is it a combination? Is it all in one?
So yeah, we're a combination of in-person and virtual, because COVID really taught us that your reach could be greater in a digital setting, a virtual setting. And it's amazing how I had people connecting from other countries on our development calls, the MVP calls and stuff. And it's just like, man, you heard about this from your social media, you saw it, like, great. And I have one of the kids now, he's in Canada. He's from Sudan. He traveled up to Canada and he calls me Godfather, because I know if he needs something, I always call and say, you got anybody I know here? And that's, again, if the lab, I have connections kind of globally. Hey, connect with such and such. He can help you here and there. And that's how we operate. It's a beautiful thing to see. I love like you said, the networking is another level.
Yeah, that's great. And then it's all over too, I'm assuming, like, just it could be anywhere.
So we have hubs. We can say we have hubs in Atlanta, Zambia, definitely Los Angeles, New Orleans, and Virginia. Those are our hubs where we have somebody in place that actually directs local activities within those different places. Dallas, Texas is the last one that we have. They run different programs. They run the same programs, but they might be at different times to fit that time zone and things like that.
That's great. And so how can people find you?
Well, definitely. You can find us either on Instagram at The Life After Ball, on Instagram, Facebook the same, Life After Ball. On LinkedIn, we're Life After Ball as well. And then you can find us online at www.lifeafterball.org. Or if you want to feel free, you just want to email me, j.mccoy@lifeafterball.org.
That's great. I mean, it's I love hearing about these different organizations that are just really making a difference and impact it, and it's all comes back to education. We talked about this again at the beginning, talked about it offline. It's I think it's so important, and just athletes know that, there are people out there that want to help. And again, this is focused on athletes. I mean, in general, there's people who want to help everybody. And, we want to make an impact with this podcast. And just, I always say, like, even if we just reach one athlete, but hopefully a lot more, just to know that there's people that have been in your shoes and then they've kind of gone and done some successful things like Jermal has here. And there's a lot of life ahead of you when you're done with your sport.
A whole lot more life ahead of you than behind you.
That's good. That's good. And you can find us at alumnidirect.com. The podcast is on our YouTube channel, Alumni Direct YouTube channel, and then across all the different podcast networks. And again, we just encourage people to listen, follow, like. This is something that can make a great impact. Jermal, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me, Rob. I appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.